My life has always obeyed a clear routine. Like a clock that I had been repairing for over 50 years, it moved in a measured and predictable way. Even after a stroke 2 years ago partially robbed me of my mobility, I kept this habit. Up at 6 in the morning, breakfast at 6:30, walk to the post office and back. Exactly 45 minutes, given my cane and my stubborn unwillingness to hurry. Lunch was always at noon, and then work in the workshop until 4. There I was still fixing clocks for a few regular customers who trusted only my hands. This day, Tuesday, May 15th, should have been no exception, but fate had decided otherwise. I was just finishing fiddling with the mechanism of an antique carriage clock when I heard the sound of a car pulling up. My window overlooked a quiet street in Stillwater, where strangers were not often seen. As I approached the window, I saw a black SUV, too expensive for our modest neighborhood. The doors opened and my heart skipped a beat. Corbin and Hilda stepped out of the car. My son and his wife I hadn't seen in almost a year. The last time they had come was on my 81st birthday 2 hours late and leaving 40 minutes later. The visit then was more like an unpleasant duty than a family celebration. Since then, our communication had been limited to occasional phone calls at Christmas and Thanksgiving. I wiped my hands clean of machine oil and leaned on my cane and slowly walked to the door. I tried to put a cheerful expression on my face, though there was a vague uneasiness in my chest. "Papa!" Corbin stepped forward with a broad smile that did not affect his eyes. "How you look! Beautifully simple." "Hello, Corbin." "Hilda." I nodded to my sister-in-law, who stood behind me, shuffling awkwardly from foot to foot. An unexpected visit. "We thought we'd surprise you." Corbin clapped me on the shoulder with such force that I could barely stand on my feet. "Did you need an excuse to visit your own father?" I used to, I thought, but I said aloud, "Come in." I was just about to put the kettle on. They followed me into the house. I was acutely aware of their gazes, sliding over the walls, the furniture, everything I had collected over the years. They seemed to be evaluating every object. "Lovely house," Hilda said with fake warmth. "So cozy." I knew what she meant. Small, old-fashioned, unpretentious. The house I'd lived in most of my life. The house I'd built with my own hands for Milna when we were first married. The house where I raised Corbin after his mother died in childbirth. "Thank you. It suits me fine," I replied dryly. "Sit down. Tea will be here in a minute." While I fiddled in the kitchen, they settled in the living room. I could hear their muffled voices, but I couldn't make out their words. When I returned with the tray, they were instantly silent. "Now, to what do I owe this attention?" I asked, setting down the cups. "Dad, aren't you pleased to see us?" Corbin feigned offense. "It's nice," I said. "It's just unusual, especially unannounced." "We were driving by," Hilda interjected, and Corbin said, "Let's drop in on Daddy. He'll probably be glad to see us." "Wouldn't you, dear?" Corbin nodded, taking a sip of tea. "How are things at work?" I asked, changing the subject. Something flashed in my son's eyes, some shadow. "Not bad. The usual routine, you know. Insurance payments, reports, meetings." He waved it off. "We're having some, temporary difficulties, but nothing major." "Difficulties?" I interjected. "Just a company restructuring," Hilda interjected hastily. "Nothing major. By the way, how's your health, Braxton? Are you feeling all right?" This sudden concern surprised me. In 10 years of marriage, Hilda had never taken much interest in my health. "Not bad for an 82-year-old man who's had a stroke," I replied. "The doctor says I'm in great shape for my age." "But you live alone," Hilda continued. "Isn't that dangerous? What if you fall or something else happens?" "I have a panic button," I pointed to the device on my wrist. "And the neighbors keep an eye on me. Seth comes by every day and Esther brings fresh baked goods every other day." "Seth? Esther?" Corbin interjected. "Who's that?" "My neighbors. Seth Falls lives on the right and Esther Prime lives across the street. They've been my friends for over 20 years. Oh, Corbin and Hilda exchanged glances. It's wonderful that you have friends, Dad. Their tone was as condescending as if I were a kid showing off a new toy. But they're old people too, aren't they? Hilda continued. They wouldn't be able to give real help in an emergency. Seth is 70 and Esther is 75, I said. They're perfectly capable of calling an ambulance if they need to. Still, Dad, Corbin shook his head, it's not the same as professional care. I don't need professional care, I said. I'm doing just fine on my own. The conversation turned to safer topics. The weather, the latest movies they'd seen, news about people they knew that I'd never heard of. But the tension didn't go anywhere. Something was wrong, and I couldn't figure out what it was. Are you staying for dinner? I asked when the conversation began to dry up. Oh, of course, Corbin exclaimed with overenthusiasm. And you know what? Hilda and I will cook. You just tell me where everything is. I can do it myself, I objected. No, Hilda was getting up from the couch. You rest. We'll take care of everything. I reluctantly gave them directions to the kitchen and stayed in the living room, listening to them rattle the dishes. A strange feeling never left me. In the 30 years Corbin had been an adult, he had never once offered to cook dinner for me. When it got dark, we had dinner. The food was decent. Chicken breasts with vegetables and rice. After dinner, Corbin announced that they would be staying the night. We have a change of clothes in the car, he said. I hope you don't mind? Of course not, I answered, though my insides clenched. The guest room is upstairs, first door on the right. I remember, Dad, Corbin smiled. I grew up in this house, remember? Yeah, and then for 20 years I barely crossed its threshold, I thought, but again I remained silent. Corbin and Hilda went upstairs to get settled. I stayed in the living room, trying to sort out my feelings. Why was their sudden appearance and ostensible concern so unsettling to me? Perhaps I was becoming too suspicious in my old age. About 11 o'clock in the evening, I decided to go to bed. My bedroom was on the first floor. After my stroke, the doctors recommended avoiding stairs. I had just finished my evening ritual of taking my medication when I heard their voices. They had come downstairs, apparently thinking I was already asleep. Their muffled conversation came from the kitchen. The perfect solution, Hilda was saying. The house is pretty old, but the lot is in a good neighborhood. If you sell it to a realtor, you could make a good amount of money. I'm not sure he'd go for it, Corbin said. You know, Dad, he's stubborn. That's why we have to insist that it's for his own good. Hilda's voice was insistent. Quiet Harbor is a decent place. They'll take better care of him than he can take care of himself. And the car? Did you see his Buick? Corbin asked. It's in great condition, classic. We could sell it separately to a collector. I froze, clutching the pill bottle in my hand. So that's what this is about. They plan to put me in a nursing home and take over my estate, my own son and his wife. I've already spoken to the administrator, Hilda continued. They can take him in within 2 weeks if we put down a deposit. The paperwork's almost ready, just need his signature. Or a guardian's signature if we can prove he's incapacitated, Corbin added. Have you seen the way he moves? And the occasional slurring of words? He may be getting dementia. Don't exaggerate, Hilda told him. We don't need custody issues. It's time-consuming and expensive. It's better to convince him it's the best option. You're his son. He has to trust you. I quietly retreated back into my bedroom and shut the door. My hands were shaking, but not from weakness, from anger. I'd devoted my entire life to Corbin. After Milna died, I'd given up a lot to give him everything I could. Worked 2 jobs to pay for his education at a prestigious university. Bought him an apartment when he married Hilda. And now that I've become a burden to them, they've decided to get rid of me. Not because they were worried about my well-being, but because they wanted my house and car. I sat on the edge of the bed, still hearing their muffled voices. In this house, every board, every nail had been hammered in with my hands. This was where I kept the memories of Milne, where my whole life had been spent. And now they wanted to take it away from me and put it in a good place. Well, I had time before their next visit. Time to prepare. I wasn't going to give up without a fight. This was my home, my life, and I would decide how to use it. Despite my age and my cane, my mind was still sharp, and if Corbin and Hilda wanted to play games with me, they should have remembered that I'd always been a good strategist. That's why I've survived 82 years in this world despite the odds. Corbin and Hilda left the next morning, promising to return in a week. Their goodbye was full of fake concern. Hilda even hugged me, for the first time in all the years we'd known each other. "We talked about something, Dad," Corbin said, standing by the car. "Something important for your future, but we'll talk about that when we get back. Just think about what we told you about living alone." I nodded and waved, keeping a quiet smile on my face. As soon as their car was around the corner, I headed across the street to Esther Prime's house. My neighbor was just taking out the trash, and her round face lit up with a smile when she spotted me. "Braxton, I see your guests have left. I saw their car last night. Who was it?" "My son and his wife," I answered, leaning on my cane. My leg was hurting worse than usual. "Haven't seen them in almost a year." Esther frowned. "Is that so? To what do you owe this visit?" "That's what I'd like to know." I looked her straight in the eye. "Esther, I need your help. More specifically, Ruth's help." Ruth, Esther's daughter, worked as an administrator at the Quiet Harbor nursing home on the outskirts of Stillwater. Esther often spoke of her with maternal pride. "Sure, Brax. Come on in. I was just baking a blueberry pie." We settled into her kitchen, as cozy and old-fashioned as mine. Esther set a cup of coffee in front of me and a piece of pie that smelled delicious. "So what happened?" she asked, sitting down across from me. I told her about Corbin and Hilda's strange visit, their unusual concern, and the conversation I had overheard. With every word I said, Esther's face grew darker and darker. "They want to send me to a nursing home, Esther. Quiet Harbor, to be exact." "Ruth's place?" She shook her head. "You're doing just fine on your own." "I know I am, but they want my house and my car." I took a sip of coffee. "I need to find out if they've really contacted the administration yet. Ruth might be able to help?" Esther pressed his lips into a thin line. "I'll call her right now." She pulled out her cell phone and dialed her daughter's number. After a brief greeting, Esther put it on speakerphone and briefly outlined the situation. "Corbin and Hilda Hollis, you say?" Ruth's voice sounded concerned. "Hold on a second. I'll check in the system." Esther and I glanced over as we heard Ruth tapping away at the keys. "Yes, they contacted us 3 days ago," she finally said. The woman had spoken to the director. They inquired about the accommodations and the checkout procedure. They said their elderly relative could no longer live independently after suffering a stroke. My fingers clenched around the cup. "Had they filled out any paperwork yet?" "Preliminary," Ruth answered. "But to make it official, they need either the person's consent or a court order appointing a guardian. We're scheduled to meet with them in 5 days, on Monday. They have to bring all the medical documents and, oh my God." "What is it?" Esther asked. "It says here they've already made a deposit. Quite a large sum, actually." There was a heavy silence in the room. So Corbin hadn't just discussed the idea, he'd already acted on it. He'd made the deposit before he'd even talked to me about it. "Braxton," Ruth's voice was soft, "if you don't want to move in with us, no one can make you. By law, as long as you're legally capable, it's your decision." "Thank you, Ruth," I said. "There's something else. They mentioned the possibility of proving my incapacity." Ruth snorted. "It's a complicated and time-consuming process. It takes serious medical reports, court hearings. If you're sane, and I know from my mom that you are, they won't get anywhere." After talking to Ruth, I thanked Esther and went home. My head was buzzing with thoughts. Corbin had planned everything in advance, even before the visit. But why now? What had happened in his life that he needed money so urgently? I decided to pay Seth Falls a visit. As a former lawyer, he could give me some sound advice. Besides, his grandnephew Dylan worked at Quiet Harbor as a nurse. Seth met me on the doorstep of his neat little house. In his 70s, he looked trim and energetic, a consequence of his obsession with golf and morning jogs. "Braxton, long time no see. To what do I owe the pleasure?" I walked into his living room where the walls were hung with diplomas and photographs from his legal career. Many had him standing next to famous politicians and businessmen. Seth had retired 10 years ago, but still maintained connections in Stillwater's legal circles. "I need information, Seth," I said, settling into the chair. "About my son." Seth raised an eyebrow. "About Corbin? You know I don't know him personally." "I know, but you have connections. Can you find out what's going on in his life, especially financially?" I told Seth about the visit and Corbin and Hilda's plans to put me in a nursing home. With each word, my friend's face grew more and more serious. "Damn it, Brax," he muttered when I was done. "That's disgusting." "I agree. But I need to know why they're doing it. Corbin mentioned some financial difficulties. What if it's something serious?" Seth rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "I have a friend in banking and another friend in real estate. I could make some calls, but Brax, that might not be entirely legal." I waved my hand. "I'm 82 years old, Seth. I'm too old to worry about little things like this. My own son is trying to put me in a nursing home to take over my assets. I need to know what I'm dealing with." Seth nodded and reached for the phone. "Okay, give me a couple days. I'll find out what I can." "There's something else," I added. "Your nephew, Dylan. Does he still work at Quiet Harbor?" "Yeah, for 3 years now. You want him to keep his ear to the ground too?" I nodded. "If that's okay. I want to know if Corbin or Hilda show up there." 3 days later, Seth knocked on my door. His usually calm face looked worried. "There's news, Brax, and it's not good news." We walked into the kitchen where I set a cup of coffee and the remains of the pie Esther had brought him. "Spill it," I said, taking a seat across from him. Seth took a deep breath. "Your son is in a lot of debt. Not just any debt, he owes people he shouldn't mess with. Casino loan sharks." I felt my heart sink. "Casino? Corbin gambles?" "It's a big one. According to a bank friend of mine, he's taken out 3 large loans in the last 6 months, all of them delinquent. Also," Seth paused, "he sold his apartment." "What apartment?" "I didn't get it." "The one you bought him for his wedding. The 2-bedroom in Highland Park." I leaned back in my chair, feeling my insides grow cold. It was the apartment I'd bought for Corbin and Hilda 10 years ago, spending almost all of my savings. It was my wedding present. "When did he sell it?" 2 months ago. Way below market value. Urgent sale, I take it." I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache coming on. "So they don't have a place to live, and that's why they want my house." "Most likely," Seth nodded. "But there's something else. Dylan saw them yesterday at Quiet Harbor. They were looking at the rooms and chatting with the director. Hilda wondered if they could transfer a patient there if he didn't want to." "And what did the director reply?" "That it was theoretically possible if there was medical evidence and a court order, but it's a long process." Seth put his hand on my shoulder. "Brax, if you don't want to move there, they can't make you. I'll personally see to it." I nodded gratefully, but anxiety was building inside. Corbin was in a desperate position. People like that could do a lot of things. "Thank you, Seth. I appreciate your help." "What are you going to do?" he asked. I thought about it, staring out the window at my old Buick parked in front of the house. I kept the car in perfect condition, like everything else I owned. It was a classic 68-year-old sedan that I'd bought used back in the 70s. Now, Those models were prized by collectors. I don't know yet, I answered honestly, but I have a week before they come back. I need to prepare. If you need legal help, I'm here for you, Seth said. And not just legal. Whatever you need, I'm here for you. After Seth left, I sat in my workshop for a long time going over my tools. My thoughts revolved around one thing. How could I protect myself and my property from my own son? Corbin was cornered by debt. Desperate men are dangerous. He could go to extreme lengths, forging my signature, convincing a doctor to write the right report, even slipping something into my food to make me look incapacitated. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a notebook. It was time to make a plan. If Corbin and Hilda wanted a war, they'd get one. But I wasn't going to fight by their methods, so I started writing. The first item was, visit the bank. Then, contact Garrett Wilson, an old friend of mine, a retired realtor. Third item, talk to Dylan in person. A plan began to emerge. If Corbin wanted my house and car, he had to learn an important lesson. Never consider an old man weak just because he walks with a cane. Over a long life, I had accumulated not only wrinkles, but wisdom, and I knew exactly how to apply it. I glanced at the picture of Milna that stood on the table. My wife was smiling, holding newborn Corbin in her arms. It was the last picture of her. An hour after it was taken, the complications began. "I'm sorry, honey," I whispered to the image. I had done everything I could, but apparently it wasn't enough. Our son didn't grow up the way we had dreamed. The week flew by faster than I expected. Every day was filled with secret preparations, visits to the bank, meetings with the notary, conversations with Garrett Wilson about the possible sale of the house. I was careful not to leave any traces that Corbin might discover. I kept all the paperwork with Seth. The night before my son arrived, I felt sick. I woke up at 4 a.m. with a heaviness in my chest and dizziness. Cold sweat covered my forehead and my heart was beating irregularly. I struggled to get to the phone and called Esther, who immediately called an ambulance. "It's just nervous exhaustion and high blood pressure," the doctor in the emergency room said after examining me. "But given your age and history of stroke, we'd like to keep you for 24 hours for observation." I spent the day in the hospital under IVs. Esther brought me some fresh clothes and told me she'd called Corbin. "He said they were still coming tonight as planned," she told me, adjusting my pillow. "I gave him the spare key to your house." "Thank you," I nodded. "Let them come. I'll be ready." "Brax, are you sure you're okay? After a seizure like that." "I'm sure," I said firmly. "That's a good thing. They'll see I'm weak, and they'll let their guard down." By 6 p.m., the doctor allowed me to go home, promising to come back immediately if the symptoms recurred. Esther drove me and helped me get settled in the living room. "Go away before they get here," I asked her. "I don't want them to know about our conversation." Esther nodded but turned around on the threshold. "Don't let them push you around, Brax. You're stronger than they think." Half an hour after she left, a familiar black SUV pulled up. I sat in the chair, covered in plaid, deliberately assuming my most infirm appearance. The front door opened and I heard Corbin's voice. "Dad, are you home?" "In the living room," I said in a weak voice. They came in, laden with bags. Hilda was carrying a paper bag from the drugstore. "Jesus, Daddy," Corbin exclaimed when he saw me. "Esther said you were sick, but we didn't think it was that bad." "It was just a little seizure," I said. "The doctors say it's nothing serious." "Nothing serious?" Hilda shook her head. "Braxton, you've been to the hospital. It's very dangerous at your age." She went straight into the kitchen and started sorting out her bags. Corbin sat across from me, placing a thick folder on the coffee table. "It's lucky we're here today," he said with feigned concern. "You shouldn't be alone, Dad, especially not after an incident like this." "I can handle it," I countered. "It's not the first time." "It's not the first time." Corbin stepped forward. "Not the first time. What if next time there's no one around to call an ambulance? I didn't say anything, pretending the thought scared me. Hilda and I have been thinking a lot about your future, he continued, and we've come up with the perfect solution. He opened the folder and pulled out a glossy brochure. On the cover was a well-kept Victorian mansion surrounded by flowering gardens. Quiet Harbor, care and comfort for a dignified old age, it read. It's a beautiful place, Dad, Corbin began, leafing through the brochure. Professional medical staff around the clock, 3 meals a day, cultural activities, spa treatments. A real 5-star hotel for people your age. Nursing home, I corrected dryly. A boarding house for the elderly, Corbin countered diplomatically. It's not what it used to be. No dreary rooms and no hospital atmosphere. Look at the rooms. He showed pictures of spacious, bright rooms tastefully furnished. I knew they were luxury rooms which cost a fortune and which, of course, no one would give me. It looks nice, I said. But why would I want to move there? I have my own house, which needs constant maintenance. Hilda came back from the kitchen. Braxton, let's face it. You can't keep it up anymore. The roof leaks, the garden's overgrown, the porch steps are wobbly. One day, you're just going to fall and break your femoral neck. At your age, that's practically a death sentence. She was exaggerating. The house did need some minor repairs, but overall it was in great condition. I kept it in good order. Besides, Hilda continued, you're all alone here. Out there you have society, new friends, constant socializing. I have friends, I objected. Seth, Esther. Who aren't getting any younger, Corbin said. Dad, we want what's best for you. After last night's attack, we're afraid for you. Hilda sat down beside me and took my hand, a gesture that made me shudder inwardly. Braxton, Corbin and I are so worried. It hurts us to see you fading away alone. Quiet Harbor will take better care of you than we could. They even have a heated pool for joint exercises. What about my house? I asked. What's going to happen to it? Corbin and Hilda looked at each other. In that quick glance, I read everything. This was it. The moment of truth. We'd keep an eye on him, Corbin said cautiously. Maybe even move in here, our apartment. We're having some housing problems right now. What kind of problems? I asked innocently. Corbin was clearly embarrassed. Just temporary difficulties. You know how hard it is to get a mortgage these days. He didn't mention that he'd sold the apartment I'd given him. I decided not to push it. What about my car? I can't take it with me to the nursing home. Buick? Corbin shrugged. It sits idle most of the time. We could sell it. The money would go to pay for your stay at Quiet Harbor. It's not cheap, I suppose. I nodded at the brochure. Quality care costs money, Hilda replied diplomatically. But don't worry, we've thought of everything. The sale of the car, part of your pension, and we may have to take out a small mortgage on the house, but that's manageable. So here's the plan. Put me in a nursing home, take possession of my house, sell the car, and then probably mortgage the house to pay off Corbin's debts. It's not hard to guess that in a couple of years they'd stop paying for Quiet Harbor and I'd be transferred to a state-run nursing home. I need to think about it, I said, leaning back in my chair and pretending to be tired. This is a big step. Sure, Dad, Corbin smiled, but don't think about it too long. There are seats available at Quiet Harbor now, and then there'll be a line. We've already put down a deposit to reserve a room for you. You, what? I acted surprised. It's just a reservation, Hilda explained hastily. It's nothing final. We just wanted to make sure that if you accepted, there would be a place for you. I nodded slowly, resigned to my fate. That's fine, if that's what you think, but at least give me a night to think about it. Sure, Dad. Corbin squeezed my shoulder. Get some rest. We'll make dinner. After dinner, I retired to my bedroom early, claiming I was tired. Through the thin wall, I could hear Corbin and Hilda discussing their plans. They were sure I had agreed and were now deciding what to do with my things. Most of it could be sold at a garage sale, Hilda said. Nobody wants this old furniture, but it'll be worth something. And his watch? Corbin asked. He's got a whole collection of antique clocks in his workshop. We'll send it to an appraiser. If they're really valuable, we could put them up for auction. I lay in the dark, listening to them divide my possessions. Strangely, I felt no anger, only cold determination. They thought they were playing me, but it was really me who had started a game whose rules they didn't yet understand. In the morning, Corbin placed a stack of documents on the desk in front of me. I deliberately left my glasses off, squinting at the papers. "What's this, son?" "It's the paperwork for registration at Quiet Harbor," he said cheerfully. "Nothing complicated. A questionnaire, a medical card, consent to the processing of personal data, the usual bureaucracy." I slowly flipped through the pages, pretending to read each line carefully. In fact, I already knew what was there. Consent to be placed in a nursing home, power of attorney to manage my estate in Corbin's name, authorization to sell the car. The last document even had language stating that I was of sound mind and good judgment to trust my son to handle all my finances. "It's a lot of stuff," I mumbled. "I'm not sure." "Dad." Corbin sat down next to me, putting his hand on my shoulder. "We talked about it yesterday. You'll be better off at Quiet Harbor, especially after that attack. What if next time there's no one around?" I looked up at him. "What about my house? I built it with my own hands. Every board here is imbued with memories of your mother." Something flashed in Corbin's eyes, a shadow of conscience perhaps, but it quickly disappeared. "We'll take good care of him, Dad, I promise. And you can come visit whenever you want." It was a lie, and we both knew it. As soon as I signed those papers, the house would be under Corbin's control, and he'd make sure I never stepped foot in it again. I sighed, feigning defeat. "Give me a pen." Corbin immediately handed me the expensive fountain pen I'd once given him as a college graduation present. I slowly signed each document, trying to make my signature look shaky and unsure. When I was done, Corbin quickly gathered up the papers, not giving me a chance to change my mind. "That's great, Dad." He grinned like a kid at Christmas. "You'll see, it's the best decision. Hilda and I will take the papers to Quiet Harbor right away, and the day after tomorrow we'll pick you up there." "So soon?" I acted scared. "The sooner the better," Hilda intervened. "Why put it off? You'll have time to pack the essentials, and we'll help." They left an hour later, not hiding their excitement. I stood on the doorstep, seeing them off, and even waved when the car disappeared around the corner. Then I went back into the house, shed my old man mask, and headed for the phone. "Seth, I need to see your nephew Dylan right away. Tonight." Dylan Abernathy arrived that evening. He was a tall young man with a serious look and a neat beard. He entered the house, looking around with curiosity. "Uncle Seth has told me a lot about you, Mr. Hollis," he said, shaking my hand. "He says you're the best watchmaker in the county." "I used to be," I smiled. "Thanks for coming, Dylan. Have a seat." We sat down in the living room. I got right to the point. "You work at Quiet Harbor. My son and his wife want to put me there." Dylan nodded. "Uncle Seth told me. I saw them arrive today with the paperwork." "What can you tell me about the place? What's it really like there?" Dylan paused, searching for words. "Quiet Harbor isn't a bad place compared to the others. It's clean, the staff is mostly polite. But it depends on how much the relatives pay. There's an elite wing, where conditions are almost like a hotel. And then there's the standard wing, where the conditions, shall we say, basic." "Where do you think they're going to put me?" "From what I've heard from your son, probably the standard ward. He talked to the principal about reasonable value for money." I grinned. I knew it. "Dylan, I need your help. I don't want to move there. At least not under duress or for my son to take over my house." Dylan looked at me carefully. "You look perfectly capable, Mr. Hollis. If you don't want to move in with us, no one can make you. Not technically, but Corbin. He's in a desperate position. I'm afraid he might go to extreme measures. I told Dylan about Corbin's debts, about the apartment he'd sold, about the conversations I'd overheard. The young man listened attentively, frowning from time to time. "I understand your concern," he said when I had finished. "But what can I do? I've already signed the moving papers. Corbin and Hilda are coming the day after tomorrow to take me to Quiet Harbor. I want you there at that time, and for you to confirm my right to refuse if I decide to do so." Dylan nodded. "Of course, Mr. Hollis. Any patient has the right to change their mind. I'll be there to make sure your rights are honored." "Thank you, Mr. Hollis. There's one more thing." I hesitated. "I need you to give a note to the receptionist, Ruth. She's my neighbor, Esther's daughter." I pulled a folded piece of paper out of my pocket and held it out to Dylan. "In her hands only, please. And don't tell anyone about our conversation." Dylan took the note and nodded. "You can count on me, Mr. Hollis. My Uncle Seth has a lot of respect for you, and I respect his opinion. If your son is really trying to manipulate you for profit, it's wrong." When Dylan left, I felt strangely relieved. I now had an ally inside Quiet Harbor. The puzzle was slowly coming together. Corbin thought he was playing me by his own rules, but he didn't realize I'd already strategized. I went into the workshop and sat down at the workbench. There was still a lot to do before the day after tomorrow, but for the first time this week I felt like I was in control. After Dylan left, I called Seth right away. We agreed to meet early in the morning at Martha's Cafe on the outskirts of town. I didn't want to risk discussing my plans at home in case Corbin had installed hidden cameras or might return unexpectedly. At 5:30 in the morning, when most of Stillwater was still asleep, I was already sitting at the far table. Across from me was Seth. Despite the early hour, he looked as alert and trim as ever. "So, old buddy," he said, sipping his coffee, "is Operation Retaliation up and running?" I smiled at his joking tone, but my eyes remained serious. "I had to sign all the paperwork, Seth. Corbin and Hilda are taking me to Quiet Harbor tomorrow morning. That means we only have 24 hours. Seth pulled a notepad out of his pocket. "I contacted Garrett Wilson like you asked. He's ready to buy your house. He's offering $220,000 in cash." I nodded. It was below market value, but I needed cash. No questions asked, no red tape. Besides, Garrett had been my friend for 40 years, and I knew he wouldn't resell the house as soon as I left. "That's acceptable. How soon can we get this deal done?" Today. Garrett's already prepared all the paperwork. All we have to do is meet him and his notary, sign the papers, and the money's yours." "What about Corbin?" "I gave him power of attorney to administer the estate." Seth grinned. "Your power of attorney doesn't take effect until you've officially moved into the nursing home. Until then, you're fully competent to manage your property. I've checked all the documents you signed. There's nothing in there that would prevent you from selling the house today." I breathed a sigh of relief. As a former lawyer, Seth knew all the legal loopholes. "What about the Buick?" I asked. "My nephew Jared collects old cars. He's excited about your model and is willing to pay $15,000. That's a good price for a 68th year." I nodded. The old car was dear to me, but I preferred it to go to a collector who would appreciate it rather than be sold for nothing to pay off Corbin's debts. "Oh, that's great. And my bank accounts?" "Bank. I've arranged with the bank manager. He'll see you in person at 10 a.m., no appointment. You can close all your accounts and take the money in cash. I've already prepared the statements." We discussed a few more details, and I felt the tension of the last few days begin to let go. The plan of action was clear and achievable. "There's one more thing," I said, pushing the empty cup away. "I want to prepare a special legacy for Corbin." Seth raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" I told him about my idea with the safety deposit box and the symbolic items. With every word I said, the smile on my friend's face grew wider. "Brax, you old fox." He laughed when I was done. "This will be the best revenge I've ever seen. Not violent, but instructive." "I hope so," I nodded. "Corbin needs to realize that his actions have consequences. Maybe this lesson will make him rethink his attitude toward life." After breakfast, we went to the bank. The manager, Mr. Parker, personally escorted me to his office. We had known each other for over 30 years. I had repaired his father's antique clock when he was a boy. "Mr. Hollis," he said as we settled into comfortable chairs, "Seth has explained the situation to me. I must say that your son's behavior is unworthy. We'll do everything we can to help you." I nodded gratefully. "I need to close all the accounts and take the money in cash, and rent a safety deposit box." "Of course." Mr. Parker made a notation in his notebook. "There's $78,420 in your accounts. That's a pretty large amount of money to withdraw in cash. Do you have a safe place to store it?" "Don't worry," Seth interjected. "We've got it all figured out." We spent the next 2 hours filling out paperwork, closing accounts, and renting a safe deposit box. When all the formalities were completed, Mr. Parker personally brought me the money in a brand new leather briefcase. "I've arranged for the bills to be in different denominations as you requested," he said. "And here's the key to the safe deposit box. It's yours for a year." Then Seth and I went to Garrett Wilson's place. The former realtor lived in a big house on a hill overlooking the lake. Despite his age, he was already 75, he was still active. "Braxton," Garrett welcomed us with open arms. "It's good to see you, old man. Seth said you were having trouble with your son." I briefly outlined the situation as we made our way into his spacious office, where the notary, a young woman with a serious face, was waiting for us. "Ungrateful bloody children," Garrett grumbled. "I always said my Tom was the exception to the rule. You know, he insisted that I live with them after Eleanor died, and no nursing home." I smiled, remembering Tom Wilson, a tall, bearded man who had always treated my father with deep respect. "You're lucky to have a son, Garrett. I know, and that makes it doubly painful to see the way Corbin treated you." Garrett shook his head. "Well, let's get down to business. The documents are ready, just need your signature." The notary laid out the papers on the table, explaining each item. I signed the sales contract, the deed of acceptance, and a few other documents. When the formalities were completed, Garrett took a large envelope out of the safe. "Here, Brax, $220,000 as agreed. Count it." I trusted Garrett, but I opened the envelope and took a quick look at the stacks of bills. "That's right. Thanks, Garrett. I don't know how to express my gratitude." Garrett waved his hand. "There's nothing to thank. You sold me a great house at a good price. It was my own decision not to resell it right away. Besides," he winked, "I've been wanting to buy a property for Tom and his family for a long time. They are cramped in their apartment, and with 2 children, they need a house with a garden." These words made my heart feel warmer. I was glad that my house would go to a good family who would live in it and not become the object of Corbin's financial fraud. After meeting Garrett, Seth and I went to his nephew Jared's house to process the sale of the Buick. Jared, a young man in his 30s, was literally glowing with joy as he inspected the car. "It's in perfect condition, Mr. Hollis," he said admiringly, running his hand over the chrome parts. "Have you serviced it yourself over the years?" "Yes," I nodded. "Changed the oil every 5,000 miles, cleaned the carburetor myself, polished the body twice a year." "You can tell. There aren't many of these left." Jared walked around the car, admiring every detail. "I'll take good care of him, I promise." We quickly completed the paperwork, and Jared handed me a check for $15,000, which I immediately cashed at the nearest bank. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the main business was done. Seth and I went back to my, now former, house to pack and prepare an inheritance for Corbin. "Where are you going to put all that money?" Seth asked, looking at the sizable sum I'd laid out on the table. "I'll take some of it with me," I answered. "The rest I'll put in a new account at another bank in a neighboring town. You'll take me there after I've spent the night at Quiet Harbor." Seth nodded. "Good plan. What about the rest of your stuff? You've got your whole life here, Brax." I looked around the living room, where every object was connected to some memory. The old chair where Milna liked to read, family photos on the walls, bookshelves littered with tomes we'd collected together. "I'll take the most precious things with me," I said quietly. "The rest, it's just stuff, Seth. Let Corbin choke on them if he wants them so badly." We began to prepare the inheritance. I pulled an old tin cookie box out of the pantry where I kept Corbin's childhood toys, the little pewter soldiers I'd shaped for him, his first construction set, a tattered Ted teddy bear. I pinned a note to the box that said, "The only thing you really deserve." Then I found an old pig-shaped piggy bank that Corbin had used as a kid. It was empty. I wrote on a piece of paper, "Your greed is as empty as this piggy bank," and put it inside. From the closet, I pulled out the Monopoly board game we'd once bought for family nights. Corbin had always loved that game, especially the process of saving money. I gathered up all the game bills and tied them with bank tape like real money. I attached a note to the bundle saying, "Here is all the money you will get from me." Then I took a picture of the house taken the day Mila and I moved here. We were standing on the porch, young and happy and full of hope. On the back I wrote, "Home is where the heart is. Too bad you don't have one." The last item was an old pocket watch I got from my father. It was long gone, but I kept it as a memento. A week ago, I took it to an engraver and had it inscribed on the inside of the lid with the words, "Time puts things in their proper place." Seth watched my preparations with a sad smile. "You know, Brax," he said when I was done, "these things and the notes, they're not just mockery. There's real wisdom in them if Corbin can see it." I nodded, folding everything neatly into a large envelope. "I hope he does. But even if he doesn't, it's my last word as a father. My legacy to him." Then I sat down at my desk and wrote a letter. In it, I explained to Corbin what I knew about his plans, about the apartment he'd sold, about the casino debts. I told him I'd sold the house and the car and I'd taken the money with me. I didn't rebuke him or lecture him, just laid out the facts and my feelings. At the end I wrote, "I hope one day you will realize that the most valuable things in life are not money or possessions. I have always loved you, son, and I always will, no matter what. But there are some lessons everyone must learn for themselves." When I finished the letter, I sealed it in an envelope and put it with the rest of the items. We took it all to the bank and put it in a rented safe deposit box. "I'll leave the key to the box with Ruth," I said to Seth as we drove home. She'd give it to Corbin when he came to Quiet Harbor and discovered that I'd disappeared. I spent the rest of the day packing the bare essentials: clothes, toiletries, a few books. I was especially careful to pick out the photos, the wedding photo of Mila, a few pictures of Corbin as a child when he was still a happy and carefree boy, a picture of my parents. I wrapped each one in a soft cloth and stowed it carefully in my suitcase. From my workshop, I took only the most valuable tools and a few pocket watches I'd been working on for the last few months. I left the rest, the workbench, the vise, the shelves of spare parts. It was only a small part of what I was leaving behind, but I felt no regret. Things can be bought again, but time spent in regret can't. Corbin called that evening. "Dad, how are you?" He sounded so happy he couldn't hide it. "We'll pick you up tomorrow morning at 9. Are you ready?" "Yes, son," I answered with a sigh. "I've got the essentials. The rest, well, you and Hilda will decide what to do with it." "Don't worry, Dad," Corbin said quickly. "We'll take care of everything. You just get some rest. You'll love it at Quiet Harbor, you'll see." After the conversation, I sat down in the living room chair, the same one where Milna liked to read, and looked around the room. This was where most of my life had passed. Here I was happy with my wife. Here I raised my son. Here I worked and relaxed. But home is not the walls. It's the memories I'll take with me. I was brought out of my musings by the doorbell. It was Esther and Seth. "We decided you shouldn't spend your last night alone," Esther said, picking up the basket of pastries. "I brought your favorite blueberry pie." "And I brought a bottle of good whiskey," Seth added, showing a bottle of Jack Daniels. "We have a lot to celebrate." I gratefully let them into the house. They were right. It wasn't worth sitting alone in an empty house, filling my heart with sadness. Better to spend this evening with true friends who supported me in my time of need. We settled down in the kitchen. Esther cut the pie. Seth poured the whiskey into glasses. We talked about the past, recalled funny stories, laughed. Not a word about Corbin, not a word about the impending move, just a warm evening with friends. By the time they left, it was late. I walked around the house one last time, saying goodbye to each room. In the bedroom, I pulled out a small bag from under the mattress, where I hid the money from the sale of the house and the car. I distributed the money into different pockets of the clothes I was going to wear in the morning. I put the suitcase with my personal belongings by the front door. During the night, I hardly slept at all. I lay staring at the ceiling and thought about tomorrow, about how Corbin and Hilda would take me to Quiet Harbor, how I would spend one night there and then disappear, about how they'll come back to the house and find it no longer belongs to me, about finding my inheritance in the safety deposit box. Strangely, I felt no gloating, no desire for revenge, just sadness that things had turned out this way, and hope that maybe this lesson would make Corbin think about his life. I got up early in the morning, showered, shaved, and put on my best suit, the same one I'd worn when I'd married Mila and buried her. It still fit me well, though I'd gotten thinner over the years. At 8:30, I was completely ready. My suitcase was by the door. My money was safely tucked away in my pockets. My most valuable photographs and my father's watch were in the inside pocket of my jacket, closer to my heart. At exactly 9 o'clock, I saw Corbin's black SUV pull up through the window. It was time for the last act of this drama to begin. The drive to Quiet Harbor took about 40 minutes. Corbin drove, and Hilda sat in the passenger seat, occasionally turning to me with a fake smile. "You'll see, Daddy, you'll love it there," she repeated for the 10th time. "They even have a garden with a gazebo where you can read books, and regular excursions into the city." I nodded silently, pretending to accept my fate. In fact, I was watching the road carefully, memorizing the route, though it wasn't really necessary. Seth was supposed to pick me up tomorrow morning. Quiet Harbor turned out to be a large Victorian mansion surrounded by a manicured park. Modern additions on the sides spoiled the classic look a little, but in general the building looked impressive and even cozy. At the entrance, we were met by the receptionist, Ruth, Esther's daughter. She smiled professionally, but when Corbin turned away, she winked at me. I nodded discreetly. Our plan was in motion. "Welcome to Quiet Harbor, Mr. Hollis," she said in a formal tone. "We've prepared a room for you in the East Wing. Come on in. I'll show you." We walked down the bright corridors. The inside of the building was not as impressive as the outside. It was a typical nursing home. Linoleum on the floor, pale green walls, the smell of medicine and disinfectants. In the hallways sat elderly people in wheelchairs or with walkers, staring blankly at nothing. Some were playing cards or watching TV in the common room. I noticed Hilda cringe when she saw an old man struggling to walk down the corridor on a walker. "We thought the room would be in the main building," she said, turning to Ruth. "The brochure showed such beautiful suites." "Those rooms are in the premium section," Ruth said. "They cost 30% more than the prime rate." Hilda glanced at Corbin, who shook his head. I suppressed a smile as I'd suspected. They'd chosen the cheapest option for me. My room turned out to be small but clean. A single bed, a bedside table, a closet, a desk with a chair, and a TV on the wall. The window overlooked the parking lot. "Make yourself comfortable, Mr. Hollis," Ruth said. "Lunch will be at 12:30 in the common dining room. A nurse will be in an hour to take down your medication information." Corbin put my suitcase by the bed. "Well, Dad, this is your new home now," he said with relief in his voice. "Do you need help unpacking?" "No, I can do it myself," I said. "You must be in a hurry." "Yes, we have to stop by your place. I mean, the house," Corbin corrected himself quickly. "Bring some more of your things." "Of course," I nodded. "I won't keep you." Hilda hugged me, for the second time since we'd met. "We'll stop by your place tomorrow, okay?" she said. "We'll bring your favorite books and maybe a chair from the living room. Make you feel cozy." "Thank you," I said. "That's very nice of you." When they left, I sat down on the bed and took a deep breath. The first part of the plan was done. Now I had to wait until they'd gotten far enough away and then contact Dylan. I started unpacking my suitcase, carefully arranging my things in the closet, slowly, methodically, like a man in no hurry to get anywhere. Through the open door, I could see nurses and orderlies walking down the hall. Finally, I spotted Dylan, who discreetly gave me a thumbs up the way was clear. I stepped out into the hallway and headed for the service exit where Dylan was waiting for me. "They left 10 minutes ago, Mr. Hollis," he said. "My car's in the back parking lot. I'll take you to Uncle Seth's like we talked about." "Thank you, Dylan. What about Ruth? Won't she have a problem with my disappearance?" "Not to worry. Officially, you're just out for a walk on the grounds. When your son comes back, she'll tell you that you voluntarily gave up your spot and took your deposit, which is in accordance with the facility's rules. She has your signed waiver document that we processed yesterday." We quickly went through the service exit and got into Dylan's old Ford. 15 minutes later, we were at Seth's house, waiting for us with packed bags. "Everything's going according to plan, Brax," he said cheerfully as he helped me out of the car. "I just got off the phone with Garrett. He's got all the utilities in his name. He officially owns the house now." "Great," I nodded. "And Tom and his family? They'll be moving in within the week." Garrett had already informed them of the purchase. Seth offered me a cup of coffee while Dylan walked back to Quiet Harbor. He had to be back in time for his shift to avoid suspicion. "When do you think Corbin will find out the house has been sold?" I asked, warming my hands on my cup. Seth glanced at his watch. "Given the time it'll take to get there and back, I think he'll be banging on the door of Quiet Harbor in an hour or an hour and a half demanding an explanation. Has Ruth been warned yet?" I nodded. "She'll hand him the safe deposit box key and tell him it's all I left for him." Seth grinned. I wished I could see his face at that moment. Dylan promised to record everything on his phone. I sipped my coffee. "You know, Seth, I don't feel happy about any of this. Just sadness. Corbin was my only son. I loved him. I still do, no matter what." Seth put his hand on my shoulder. "I know, Brax, but you did what you had to do. Not to punish him, but to protect yourself. I hope he realizes that someday." We finished our coffee and started loading things into Seth's car, a spacious SUV he'd bought for fishing trips. The trunk was already loaded with fishing gear and a tent. "Are you sure you want to come with me?" I asked. "It's not necessary, Seth. I could hire a cab or take the bus." "And miss the best part?" Seth laughed. "No way. I've been wanting to see the ocean for 30 years, but I kept putting it off. Now I've got a great excuse and a great traveling companion. Plus," he winked, "I know a great place on the Oregon coast. It's a small town where no one asks too many questions. I've got a buddy who rents cabins by the water." That's when Seth's cell phone rang. It was Dylan. "They're here," he said excitedly. "They just stormed into Quiet Harbor demanding to see Grandpa. You should have seen their faces when Ruth told them Mr. Hollis had taken the deposit and refused to give up his seat. Corbin yelled something about fraud and threatened a lawsuit. Ruth held like a rock and finally handed them the key to the safe deposit box. They took off like crazy. "Thanks, Dylan," Seth said. "Keep us posted." We finished loading and got in the car. Seth started the engine, but before he started, he turned to me. "Last chance to change your mind, Brax. We can stay and face Corbin, explain everything to him. Maybe he'll understand." I shook my head. "No, Seth. I left him a letter in the box. It explained everything. And now I want to start a new chapter of my life. No hard feelings, no disappointments." Seth nodded and pulled onto the road. We were heading west toward the coast of the Pacific Ocean, which I had never seen before. We had 600 miles of travel ahead of us, but I didn't feel tired. On the contrary, with each mile away from Stillwater, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. We rode all day, stopping only for refueling and snacks. Seth was a great traveling companion. He knew a lot of funny stories from his law practice and didn't mind when I sometimes lapsed into silence, watching the changing scenery outside the window. In the evening, we stopped at a motel off the road. After dinner at a roadside cafe, Seth got another call from Dylan. "You won't believe what happened," he exclaimed. Corbin and Hilda had returned to Quiet Harbor after visiting the bank. They were furious. Corbin shouted at Ruth, demanding to know where his father had disappeared to. Ruth stood her ground. "You voluntarily gave up your seat, took the deposit, and left." She showed them your signed waiver. When Corbin threatened to call the police, Ruth calmly said it was his right, but reminded them that a person of legal capacity had every right to refuse the services of the institution and leave at any time. "What about the safety deposit box?" I asked. "Had they opened it?" "Yes." Dylan could barely contain his laughter. Judging by their faces when they came back, they weren't happy about what they found there. Hilda was crying and Corbin was white as chalk. He kept saying, "It can't be, it can't be." I guess your inheritance made an impression. After talking to Dylan, I sat on the motel porch for a long time looking up at the stars. Seth joined me, holding out a glass of whiskey. "What's on your mind, Brax?" "Milna," I answered quietly. "I wonder what she'd say about all this." Seth thought for a moment. "I didn't know your wife, but from what you've told me about her, she was an intelligent and fair woman. I think she would have understood." I nodded, taking a sip of whiskey. "You know, when she died, I swore I'd do everything I could to make sure Corbin grew up to be a decent man. I guess I was wrong about something." "Don't blame yourself," Seth said. "You did everything you could. You gave him love, education, support. What he became was his own choice." We finished our whiskeys in silence, each of us absorbed in our own thoughts. The next day we continued on our way. Toward evening, the blue of the ocean loomed ahead. I asked Seth to stop at a lookout point. Getting out of the car, I stood for a long time looking at the vast expanse of water. The ocean was majestic and beautiful, mighty waves crashing against the rocky shore, seagulls circling overhead, and the setting sun painting everything golden. "It was amazing, wasn't it?" Seth stood beside me. "Yes," I replied quietly. "I wish I'd seen it sooner." "Better late than never," Seth said philosophically. "Come on, it's about 30 miles to the town. We'll be there in time for dinner." The little coastal town of Neptune Cove was exactly as Seth had described it, cozy, quiet, with wooden houses lining the shore. Seth's buddy Mark met us at a small bungalow just 100 yards from the ocean. "Welcome," he greeted us warmly. "Seth didn't say you'd be staying long, but I've prepared the cabin just in case. It's got 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room overlooking the ocean. It's modest, but clean." "Thank you, Mark," I said. It was exactly what we needed. After dinner at a local restaurant that served the freshest seafood, I went to the beach. The sun had already set, but the sky was still glowing with delicate shades of pink and purple. I took off my shoes and walked along the water's edge, feeling the cool waves wash over my feet. A strange sense of freedom swept over me, as if I had lifted a heavy weight off my shoulders that I had been carrying all these years. I found a comfortable rock and sat down, looking at the dark horizon line where the sea merged with the sky. I took Milna's picture out of my pocket, the one of her standing on the porch of our new house, young and happy. "I did it, Milna," I whispered. "Started a new life. I hope you would approve." At that moment, my cell phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from Dylan. He sent a short video of Corbin standing on the doorstep of my former house, stunned, listening to Tom Wilson explain that his father had bought the house a few days ago and it was now family property. Corbin's face is contorted with shock and disbelief. Another message follows. He went into the bank. The accounts are empty. The Buick is sold too. He's at a complete loss. Asked Ruth if she knew where you were headed. She said you mentioned something about the ocean. I smiled and hid the phone. The ocean is big and I'm just a lone figure on its shore. If Corbin really wants to find me for reconciliation, not money, maybe someday I'll let him. But not now. Right now, I wanted to enjoy the peace and freedom I'd been putting off for so long. The sun had finally disappeared over the horizon, and the first stars lit up the dark sky. I took a deep breath of the salty sea air. There was a whole new life ahead of me, maybe not as long as the last one, but belonging to me. And I was going to live it by my own rules. Footsteps on the sand sounded behind me. Seth came over and sat silently beside me. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he asked, looking at the stars reflected in the dark water. "Thank you for bringing me out here," I nodded. "You're welcome," he smiled. "That's what friends are for." We sat on the shore, two old men looking out at the ocean. The unknown was ahead, but it didn't scare me anymore. I felt a strange peace, as if I had finally found my place in the world, a place where I could start anew, even at 82. The waves lapped the shore, washing away the marks in the sand. Time would gradually erase the pain and disappointment, leaving only calm wisdom and perhaps hope that all was not lost. Even for lost souls like my son Corbin.